Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho changed the horror industry in 1960. It also turned everyday showers into nightmares. But behind the blood-curdling screams and chilling strings are secrets Hitchcock never wanted you to know. From chocolate syrup standing in for blood to a melon stabbed in place of human flesh, this movie is hiding more than just Norman's mother in the basement. Today we're pulling back the curtain with 20 secrets they never told you about Psycho in 1960. Did you know that everyone believed Psycho would fail?
Well, why don't you have a look around here and see if there's something to strike your eyes? Meanwhile, I'll have my mechanic give yours a once-over.
Fact number 1. Psycho was expected to be a low-budget flop. When Alfred Hitchcock first set out to make Psycho, people thought he was out of his mind. The studios didn't believe in the project. Paramount, his usual partner, practically turned its back on him, saying the story was too distasteful and would flop. But Hitchcock wasn't the type to give up. He decided to finance the film himself, which meant he had to cut costs in every way possible. Instead of using a big flashy crew, he brought in the team from his TV series, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. He even shot in black and white, partly because it was cheaper and partly because he thought it would make the violence less graphic. The budget was just about $806,000, microscopic compared to his other films. And to keep things really lean, Hitchcock didn't take his usual salary. Instead, he asked for a percentage of the profits. That risky move turned out to be genius because Psycho went on to make more than $50 million worldwide, becoming one of the most profitable movies of its time. What critics once dismissed as a cheap horror flick is now considered one of the most important films in cinema history. A supposed flop became a cultural giant. Part of what made Psycho so disturbing was that it had roots in real-life horror.
Well, there's a big diner about 10 miles up the road, just outside of Fairvale.
Fact number 2, a real-life serial killer was an influence. Robert Bloch's novel Psycho was the inspiration for Alfred Hitchcock's film. The author didn't just pull Norman Bates out of thin air. He was partly inspired by Ed Gein, a real-life murderer and grave robber from Wisconsin. In 1957, police discovered that Gein's farmhouse was filled with horrifying items, furniture made from bones, bowls carved from skulls, and even a suit stitched together from human skin. Norman Bates shares eerie traits with Gein. Both were socially isolated, both had an unhealthy attachment to domineering mothers, and both blurred the lines between life and death in their twisted worlds. Now, Bloch never said outright that Gein was the template, but the parallels are hard to ignore. The influence is what makes Psycho feel so grounded. The idea that Norman Bates wasn't some supernatural villain, but a character who could easily exist in small-town America. That ordinary guy-turned-monster theme is part of what keeps the film scary till date. And that leads to another juicy secret. Hitchcock wanted Psycho to feel more real than anything he had ever directed before.
I'm always forgetting to turn the sign on, but we do have a vacancy. 12, in fact.
Fact number 3, Psycho was Hitchcock's most naturalistic film. Unlike Hitchcock's glossy thrillers like North by Northwest or Rear Window, Psycho is stripped down and gritty. For example, the blood swirling down the shower drain wasn't the glossy red stage blood studios often use. It was actually Hershey's chocolate syrup, chosen because it looked more realistic in black and white and had the right thickness to mimic blood. Instead of glamorous leads and elegant locations, we see an ordinary secretary in a cheap hotel, a used car lot, and a lonely roadside motel. These aren't Hollywood backdrops. They're supposed to feel like real places you could walk into. Hitchcock was making a point. Horror doesn't just belong in castles or faraway lands. It can strike in everyday life. Psycho feels so raw because it looks like the world the audience lived in. Even the Bates Hotel had the same cheap, functional vibe as the motels people stopped at during road trips. This naturalism made the violence all the more shocking. When Marion steps into the shower, it doesn't feel like a set piece. It feels like something that could happen in any ordinary bathroom. And speaking of realism, Hitchcock actually toned down Marion's death. In the original novel, it was far more brutal.
I mean, just to be safe.
I didn't intend to sleep all night.
Fact number 4, Marion's death was a lot nastier in the novel. In Robert Bloch's book, Marion's death is much more graphic than what Hitchcock put on screen. In the novel, Norman Bates viciously stabs her, and the description leaves no room for imagination. Hitchcock, on the other hand, turned the scene into an exercise in suggestion rather than gore. The shower sequence in the film is iconic not because of what you see, but because of what you think you see. The editing, the music, and the quick flashes made it feel violent and shocking. Even though the knife never quite visibly penetrates the body, Hitchcock understood that the imagination can be far scarier than explicit visuals. By softening the brutality, he made it more universal. Audiences in 1960 weren't used to graphic violence, but the idea of it disturbed them deeply. And ironically, the subtlety is what made the scene timeless. Of course, to make the scene work at all, Hitchcock had to solve a very practical problem. How do you film a shower murder without the water ruining your shots? That's our secret number 5.
I want you to take a look at my baby.
Fact number 5, a special shower head had to be made. Filming the shower scene was a technical nightmare. Cameras in 1960 weren't small, and water was a major problem. If the water droplets hit the lens the wrong way, the shot was ruined. To solve this, Hitchcock's team designed a special shower head that sprayed water evenly, creating a curtain-like effect without splashing all over the place. This even spray was crucial. It gave the scene the iconic visual of water cascading around Marion, while still allowing the camera to capture her expressions and the knife movements clearly. It also let the water and blood, that's chocolate syrup in this case, flow smoothly down the drain, setting up one of the most famous dissolves in cinema. That's the transition from the spiral in the drain to Marion's lifeless eye. And speaking of things audiences had never seen before, Psycho also broke another taboo. It seems silly today, but in 1960 it was shocking. It was the toilet flush.
12 cabins, 12 vacancies. They moved away the highway.
Fact number 6, the film includes a famous first toilet flushing. It's funny to think about now, but in 1960, showing a toilet on screen was practically scandalous. At the time, Hollywood had a strict set of rules called the Hays Code, and one of its unspoken taboos was bathrooms. Audiences weren't supposed to see toilets, let alone see one being flushed. Hitchcock decided to break that rule in Psycho. When Marion Crane rips up the note with her calculations about the stolen money, she throws the piece into the toilet and flushes. It seems like a tiny ordinary detail today, but back then it was groundbreaking. For many viewers, it was the first time they'd ever seen such a thing on the big screen. Hitchcock insisted on it because he wanted realism. Just like the motels and car lots, the bathroom had to feel like a real space, not a sanitized version of life. And ironically, that tiny moment made the scene more shocking when violence intruded just a minute later. There's so much to go over in the shower scene. Secret number 7 is another.
He was flirting with you. I guess he must have noticed my wedding ring.
Fact number 7, there is a very brief graphic shot of the knife going into Marion. For decades, people swore they saw the knife repeatedly stabbing Janet Leigh in the shower. But if you go frame by frame, the blade never truly pierces her skin, except for one split second. There is a single, blink and you'll miss it frame where the knife appears to enter Marion's abdomen. Some argue it's just clever editing. Others say it was a daring shot Hitchcock snuck past the censors. Hitchcock himself said the knife never went in. Either way, it's one of the most debated details in horror history. That one quick moment works almost like a magician's trick. It convinces your brain that the stabbing is real, even though most of the violence is happening off screen. And it shows how Hitchcock used psychology as much as visuals to terrify his audience. And while the shower scene made Janet Leigh unforgettable, it had the opposite effect on Anthony Perkins.
There's hangers in the closet and stationery with Bates Motel printed on it.
Fact number 8, the role of Norman hindered Anthony Perkins' career. Anthony Perkins gave the performance of a lifetime as Norman Bates. His boyish charm, nervous smile, and soft voice made Norman both likable and deeply unsettling. But the role came with a cost. Perkins was so believable as Norman that Hollywood struggled to see him as anyone else. After Psycho, Perkins found himself typecast. He was repeatedly offered roles that mirrored Norman's awkward, unstable personality, and it became difficult for him to land the kind of varied parts that keep an actor's career thriving. Though he did continue working, including starring in several Psycho sequels, the shadow of Norman Bates never really left him. It's one of those iconic twists of Hollywood. The role that made Perkins famous also limited him, but he has made it clear that he would still play Norman all over again if he went back in time. And speaking of burdens, the shower scene, again. Fact number 9, the shower scene took a week to shoot. The shower sequence lasts just 45 seconds on screen, but it took 7 full days to film. Hitchcock storyboarded it down to the tiniest detail, using more than 70 camera setups and over 78 separate cuts. Each angle had to be carefully planned so the audience would feel the violence without actually seeing anything explicit. The camera had to avoid nudity, show just enough of the knife to be terrifying, and keep the rhythm sharp and disorienting. Hitchcock wanted the sequence to feel like a violent ballet, with editing and music doing most of the work. Janet Leigh later said it was exhausting. She stood under cold water for hours while cameras and lights surrounded her. The crew shot take after take, making small adjustments to the angle of the knife, the shadow on the curtain, or the screen. By the end of the week, everyone was drained, especially Leigh, who later admitted she was so scarred by the experience, she avoided showers for a while. As if the scene itself weren't disturbing enough, the movie's release brought new horrors for Janet Leigh.
I guess I'll go put this money in the bank.
Fact number 10, Janet Leigh received threatening letters after Psycho's release. When Psycho became a cultural phenomenon, Janet Leigh's performance made her a star and a target. After the film's release, she began receiving disturbing letters from strangers. They were not weird fan notes. Many of them described in graphic detail what the writers would like to do to Marion Crane in a shower. Some of the letters were so vile that Leigh passed them to the FBI. Incredibly, the FBI tracked down the culprits, and at least some of them were caught. It showed just how deeply the film blurred the line between fiction and reality in dangerous ways. For Leigh, it was both a compliment and a curse. On one hand, her performance had clearly left a mark. On the other, it exposed her to a darker side of fandom, one that preyed on her vulnerability in the film. It was yet another reminder that Psycho wasn't just a scary movie. It was a representation of a group of people in ways Hitchcock himself probably never expected. And speaking of the unexpected, Hitchcock rewarded the composer in a way few directors ever have.
Well, I wanted him to look up to the crowd and up to the people leaning out of the window.
Fact number 11, Hitchcock liked Bernard Herrmann's score so much that he doubled his salary. The screeching violins in the shower scene are almost as famous as the stabbing itself. The sharp, grating, unforgettable sound was the work of composer Bernard Herrmann. Hitchcock originally wanted no music at all in the shower sequence. He thought silence would make it scarier, but Herrmann disagreed. So he secretly wrote the chilling score anyway and played it for Hitchcock. The moment Hitchcock heard it, he changed his mind instantly. He didn't just approve the music. He was so impressed that he doubled Herrmann's salary on the spot. Can you imagine Psycho without that piercing, violent shriek? It's almost impossible. Herrmann's music took Hitchcock by surprise, and another actor on set gave him a shock of a different kind.
If he felt a strong attraction to any other woman.
Fact number 12, Simon Oakland nailed his final monologue in one take. At the very end of Psycho, psychiatrist Dr. Fred Richmond delivered a long, heavy monologue explaining Norman Bates' fractured psyche. It's one of those moments where the entire story finally clicks into place. Hitchcock knew it was a tough scene, full of technical language and psychological jargon. He expected multiple takes. But Simon Oakland, the actor playing Dr. Richmond, delivered the entire monologue in one flawless take. He came in literally on his lunch break from another job to record that climactic psychiatrist scene. Hitchcock reportedly said something along the lines of, "You just cut my work in half." It's a small detail in a film full of iconic moments, but Oakland's one-take wonder tied the whole story together. Of course, Hitchcock was as particular about the acting as he was about the props. And one day, Janet Leigh found out the hard way. Fact number 13, Hitchcock put Bates' mother's corpse in Janet Leigh's dressing room to test how scary it was. Hitchcock loved his psychological tricks. He played it out in his movies and on his actors. To test whether Bates' mother's corpse was truly terrifying, he once placed the skeletal dummy in Janet Leigh's dressing room without warning her. He wanted to make her scream. When she walked in and saw the skeletal figure sitting there, she really screamed in pure shock. Hitchcock, of course, was delighted. This prank wasn't just for a laugh. It was part of his method. He wanted to see if the corpse could provoke a real reaction before trusting it to scare audiences. If it startled his own leading lady, he knew it would terrify the crowd. And if you think that was a little much, wait until you hear what the censors tried to ban from the film.
He was simply doing everything possible to keep alive the illusion of his mother being alive.
Fact number 14, the MPAA tried to forbid the use of the term transvestite. At the end of the film, Dr. Richmond explains Norman Bates' condition using the word transvestite. Believe it or not, the Motion Picture Association of America, MPAA, tried to forbid Hitchcock from including that term. At the time, it was considered taboo, and the censors thought audiences wouldn't accept hearing it in a mainstream film. But Hitchcock fought back. He argued the word was necessary for the psychological explanation, and cutting it would weaken the ending. Eventually, he won the battle, and the word stayed in the final cut. Looking back, it's shocking that the censors cared more about a word than about showing a woman being brutally murdered on screen. This is just another example of how Psycho constantly pushed the boundaries of what Hollywood could get away with. Speaking of boundaries, Hitchcock went to extreme lengths to make sure no one spoiled Psycho's shocking twist before audiences saw it.
Why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
Fact number 15, Hitchcock went to extreme lengths to hide the twist ending. In an era when plot details often leaked before opening night, Hitchcock treated Psycho's ending like a state secret. He brought up as many copies of Robert Bloch's original novel as he could, just to keep people from reading ahead. He also refused to let critics watch advanced screenings. Even the cast was kept in the dark. The actors were only given the pages of the script that applied to their scenes. That's not all. During filming, he misled moviegoers and reporters about Mrs. Bates' true identity. Hitchcock leaked stories that he was considering stars such as Helen Hayes and Judith Anderson for the part. He even kept a chair on set with Mrs. Bates marked on it to keep up the ruse. And when Psycho even first premiered, Hitchcock launched one of the boldest marketing campaigns in film history. Every theater showing the film displayed a giant cardboard cutout of Hitchcock pointing to his watch, with a stern message. No one would be admitted after the movie started. He wanted everyone to be glued to the screen from the very first minute. He was so particular about Psycho that he left clever little visual clues about Norman's double life, hiding them in plain sight for sharp-eyed viewers. One of the most fascinating is tucked right into Norman's parlor wall. Fact number 16, the painting Norman moves is an Easter egg. Remember the scene where Norman spies on Marion through a peephole in the parlor wall? To access it, he removes a framed painting. That painting isn't random. It is Susanna and the Elders, a story about two men secretly watching a young woman bathe. The choice wasn't accidental. Hitchcock loved sneaking in symbolism, and this one works on multiple levels. Just like the Elders, Norman watches a woman in a moment of privacy, turning something innocent into something sinister. It's a chilling little Easter egg that reinforces Norman's twisted voyeurism, hiding in plain sight for anyone who recognizes the artwork. That's not all. The sound design of Marion's murder also had its own creepy secret ingredient. Fact number 17, the stabbing sound came from a melon. Remember the horrifying sound of the knife plunging into Marion's body? It wasn't created with special effects or sound machines. Instead, the sound team experimented with different fruits and vegetables until they found the perfect one, a cassava melon. When stabbed, it made the exact squishy, fleshy noise Hitchcock wanted. Hitchcock even held a special kind of audition for produce, listening as sound editors stabbed different fruits in front of him. Once he heard the melon, he reportedly said, "That's it." The result was so convincing the audiences swore they'd heard real flesh being pierced. Psycho definitely did a lot of cool things. One is how it quietly introduced something that would go on to define the entire slasher genre.
You're very kind.
It's all for you. I'm not hungry. Go ahead.
Fact number 18, Lila Crane was the first final girl in slasher history. Did you know that Vera Miles wore a wig to play Lila Crane because she had shaved her head for her role in 5 Branded Women in 1960? Well, that's not the secret. It's this. Horror fans who have grown to love the concept of the final girl, the last woman standing who confronts the killer, like Laurie Strode in Halloween or Nancy in A Nightmare on Elm Street, but the very first final girl appeared in Psycho, Lila Crane, Marion's sister. She's the one who digs deeper, refuses to give up, and ultimately uncovers Norman's secret in the chilling climax. Without Lila, Norman might never have been exposed. In hindsight, Psycho created one of the most enduring tropes in horror. The final girl has become a staple for slashers for decades, but it all started with Lila wandering into that creepy old house. And while Lila was the first final girl on screen, Hitchcock himself always had the last laugh off the masterpiece.
That I've never cross-cut, you see, in the early Griffith days.
Fact number 19, Hitchcock's dry cleaner response to a fan letter. After Psycho's release, Hitchcock received a letter from a frustrated father. The frustrated man explained that his daughter had refused to take bath ever since seeing Diabolique, another thriller with a bathtub murder. And now after Psycho, she refuses to shower as well. The father asked Hitchcock what he was supposed to do. When Hitchcock replied, he said, "Send her to the dry cleaners." It's the perfect Hitchcock punchline, but it also shows how seriously Psycho had gotten under people's skin. And it didn't stop with showers. This is our final secret. Fact number 20, the shower scene became evidence in film classes and courtrooms. After Psycho came out, the shower scene took on a life of its own. Film schools studied every cut, every scream, every drop of chocolate syrup that passed for blood. But it didn't just stay in film class. In the years that followed, lawyers and psychologists actually referenced Psycho in court to show how movies could mess with the human mind. The idea was simple. If a few seconds of quick cuts could make audiences feel real terror, what else could film make people believe? Hitchcock didn't just make a scene, he proved that moving pictures could reach into your mind and stay there. And there you have it, 20 secrets about Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. From chocolate syrup, blood, and melon stabs to shocking letters, strict theater rules, and even Hitchcock's twisted sense of humor. It's no wonder this film changed the horror genre forever. Thanks for sticking around for the ride. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your favorite Hitchcock movie in the comments. And as Hitchcock himself might say, be careful in the shower.